Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Let's double check that I have a signal because we should be live at the moment. And we are. Hey, Chris, welcome and thank you for being with me this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, Lloyd. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, glad to see you again. Yeah, I know. Sorry we couldn't stream last week, but as you know, there was construction at my house. And thank you very much to the audience for being with us again today. It's always a great pleasure to have Chris on. He brings some really fascinating perspectives since he's literally in the trenches talking about Islam. And let me just say thank you. So we have T, we've got Kagito Ergo, we've got Horse, welcome. We have Villainous, welcome, thank you. Rob K from Canada Prairies, welcome, great. Let's see, we have Solo Cristo, we have Marco Paulo, welcome. And we've got Eva, Ken Johnston, Joel Thomas, Damian Kuzmich, and non-profit organization, Shalom, welcome. Yeah, Chris, do you want to give us any updates on what you've been up to? Anything that would be interesting or useful regarding your channel and activities?
Sure. Yeah. So last few weeks, I've been kind of setting up to do sort of more like I guess you could say in-depth videos covering both Christian theology and Islamic theology, as well as covering things that we typically go through at Speaker's Corner. And part of that is setting up cameras, setting up a workspace to edit, to create videos, and a lot of my time is invested in that. And same old study, whether that is Bible study or study of the Quran, study of Islam in general. Those things are pretty much what I've been working on.
Chris, everyone's hearing echo. Could you just speak again, please?
Yep, testing.
Okay, my apologies. That should have the echo should be fixed because everyone just did. Just say something again, please. Yeah, okay. My apologies. That again is my fault. The echo would be my fault.
You know, I'm pretty sure the last live stream we did, there was also an echo, I think.
Yeah, that was a different echo problem. Yeah, this was my fault. My apologies. Because when I added your channel in again, it added another audio. When I added your video back in, it added another audio channel.
Right.
Yeah, we were a few minutes late because, as always, I messed up the technical setup and I had to re-add Chris, and then I added another audio channel, so it had two audio channels. I killed one of them. So just to go back on, tell us more. Is there anything more about what you've been up to? So what do you hope to achieve with what you're doing right now?
So I think there is an attempted narrative by Muslims at Speaker's Corner, particularly Da'is, people who are engaged in dawah. They want to push this particular way of looking at Christianity in a very negative light. Christianity is supposedly irrational. It's not monotheistic. Christians believe in multiple gods. Christians don't understand that God can't die. There are many different sort of base level, very poor, not very well thought out, not very well planned polemics that they make. And I kind of just want to get involved in refuting them. I want to make videos of the sort of higher caliber that kind of address these so people can look at them, people can have a reference for like refuting that kind of material. And I want to continue making YouTube shorts as well, which is something I've been doing for the last month or so, just kind of making interesting and engaging content about what we see at Speaker's Corner.
Okay, that's interesting. You know, something I've realized that when we look at the word logos, right, logic, rationality, and this is something I touched on my channel last week. I did a talk about Saint Thomas Aquinas, about Aristotle, and the rediscovery of rational thought in the High Middle Ages, where Aristotle's ideas of rational thinking were discovered and utilized to create scholasticism in the Middle Ages in the 1200s by the Catholic scholars. And they basically started to utilize this idea of how do you rational investigation, rules of evidence. How does one determine what is truth? How do you find truth? Because Aristotle believed that there is objective truth. And this was a process that was pursued within the church. And then, of course, this led to the development of scholasticism, the development of universities and schools. And also this led to the development of science based out of Christian thinking. And when you look at other ideologies, they don't respect logos. So therefore, by definition, they are irrational. And ultimately, they drift off into fantasy. Like today, men can get pregnant. Well, I mean, this is obviously so ridiculous. And of course, Islam, while maybe not that crazy in that particular sense, it has a bunch of other irrational ideas that are not attached to reality. And of course, the more that we push them now, as we're pushing them, I believe, further and further, because they're retreating, as they can't defend certain ideas, they're going to have to reach into fantasy, and they just hang themselves by being ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're totally right as well to say that there are other ideologies that are guilty of this same thing. The Western liberal perspective, I think, in its current progressive form, has, or at least is attempting to abandon the Judeo-Christian traditions of which gave us, modern science, they gave us medicine, they gave us, even modern education as we know it has its roots back in the scholastic tradition.
Yes.
So I think that's totally correct and a good way of looking at it. And I think that's half the battle sometimes, is just like identifying these things, knowing exactly what is our history, knowing it well enough to be able to defend it, and knowing from that what ought we do to make people more aware of this and to combat it. And I think there's some interesting stuff we can go into.
All right. No, that's fantastic.
Combating it.
Oh, Mal from Islamic Origins is in the chat. Welcome, Mal. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Mal.
Yeah. Sometimes I know I can probably use a little bit of my own medicine when it comes to discussing rationality. I do tend to get a little bit, as some people have called me occasionally, a bulldog. I tend to be a little, but that's that. Okay, so before we go on, I just want to, there was something that I was, okay, everyone, just briefly, my current project. Okay, actually I'm working on about a dozen projects simultaneously right now. So I've got several of them close to completion, and I'm busy doing research across, because what's interesting is the more you start to research and you start to draw the threads, the more you find these things all start to converge. This is my current project. You can probably see it, Chris. Yeah, Islam, Freemasons, Sufis, and Nazis. The Curious Case of Baron Rudolf von Subottendorf. And of course, here's my... I did this myself. Yeah, so what is interesting is there's a quote by Adolf Hitler. Actually, you know what? Let me just load this. Here's a quote by Adolf Hitler, and it says, "He who has seen in National Socialism only a political movement has seen nothing." And I think this is something that would be very, very relevant for us to understand, that National Socialism is far more than just a political movement. It is a religion, and it has a very strong occult religious basis. Okay.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah,
yeah. Something else I can think of.
Yeah. So, and yeah, sorry, oopsie, I might have made a mistake there. Sorry, there's Hitler. My bad. That was just a typo I made.
Are you meant to be showing this on screen, or?
Am I showing?
No.
Oh, sorry. Oh my golly, guys, my apologies. Okay, sorry. Yes, I was meant to be showing this on screen. Oh, yeah, I am.
Hitler here.
I made a wrong mistake. See, so okay, guys, let me just take a couple of minutes to introduce you to what I'm working on: Islam, Freemasons, Sufis, and Nazis. The Curious Case of Baron Rudolf. Oh my golly. Okay, so this is going to be very interesting. This is crazy. Logos leads to progress, Islamic origin says, and Islam leads to regress because they have no logos. And agreed, atheism has no logos. All of them have no logos, and what they term science is not rational science. This takes us back to occult science. Oh, by the way, so this is the quote, my bad. "He who has seen in National Socialism only a political movement has seen nothing." And that's a quote by Adolf Hitler, because, as I just mentioned earlier, this is much more than just a political movement. It was a religious movement. It was an occult religious movement. And of course, someone's going to drop, "Well, Lloyd, occult really just means things that are hidden from us, and it's got really mundane, phrase. You really shouldn't make it a bad name. It's like, go away, go bother someone else." Okay, sorry, I may have confused two characters over there. Sorry, I might have confused Hitler with someone else. So, but I swear I swear they have the same mustache. So, by the way, we've mentioned this guy. I'm not going to talk about Rudolf von Subotendorf. I'm just going to... the peoples of Islam will always be closer to us than, for example, France, because Hitler was a Christian. You know, Chris, right? Everyone says Hitler was a Christian. You know why? Because
totally.
Hitler actually said he was a Christian. He said it, apparently, the day after he was accused by members of the German government to be anti-Christian and anti-church. So the next day he gave a speech and said, I am a good Christian, because he said it twice. And but yeah, I mean, also he but he'd never lie. Fortunately, we know that. It is our misfortune to have the wrong religion. Why didn't we have the religion of the Japanese? You know, those crazy Japs? Yeah, that went wild. Or the Mohammedan religion, too, would have been more compatible to us than Christianity. That's because he was a good Christian, right? And of course, he goes on, had Charles Martel not been victorious at Poitiers, then we should in all probability have been converted to Mohammedanism, which glorifies the heroism and which opens up the seventh heaven to the bold warrior. Then the Germanic races would have conquered the world. Yeah, thanks. And then, of course, here we got this guy, Martin Luther, who invented Christianity in the 1500s, I believe. Christianity was started by this guy. And he tells us the religion of the Turks, or Muhammad, is far more splendid in customs than ours, okay? And our religions are mere shadows when compared to the Muslims, and our people clearly profane compared to them. Not even true Christians, not even Christ himself, not the apostles or the prophets ever exhibited so great a display of religiosity. That's good old Martin Luther saying nice things about Islam. Good, nice, thanks. I just want to mention a couple of things. This slide is probably false, so before anyone quotes me, I'm still working on that. It's bright yellow because I think it's wrong. Let me see, there's a couple of things. Okay, yes, this is from he perceived Islam to be a superior religion, okay? He believed that Christianity had universalized the terrorism of religion as a result of Jewish dogma. Of course, they recruited a lot of Muslims to fight for the SS. And then, of course, notice here, I want to show you guys something, the Thule Society letterhead. So the Thule Society started by a Muslim, okay? So this guy converts to Islam. He becomes a Freemason, he becomes a Sufi, he starts the Thule Society, which is a front for another secret society, right? Look at this here. This is the Thule Gesellschaft, okay? The Thule Society. Look at their symbol. This is their symbol here. This is the swastika, or the Hakenkreuz. Hakenkreuz means the hooked cross, right? Look at the similarity. This is the same symbol, okay? This is the same symbol because Hitler joined this organization, and then the next year they converted it to the Nazi Party. This secret society which dealt in the occult, in Islamic occult practices, by the way. Any comment from you before we go on?
Well, just a little bit about the quotes you were showing earlier, quoting Hitler and his perspective on Christianity. I had the misfortune of reading at least a part of Hitler's table talk, like his conversations that he had. I think it was a secretary that recorded some of the conversations he had at like a dinner parties.
And others, yeah. Well, people will dispute the English translations because they say it's bad, but the German translations, the German, original German, apparently that... Yeah, but anyway, people will try to dismiss it all. But yes, they are pretty bad.
So what was... I heard this as well. I actually heard atheistic arguments that you can't trust this. So I thought, and they were quoting a specific part. And I thought, okay, well, when it comes to that part, I'll hold it with a bit of salt, right? Don't take it too seriously. It might not be true. Just read the general thing and see what he says. And I was just amazed at how many times he talks down and negatively about Christianity. And how many times he speaks positively about what he calls Mohammedanism.
Yes.
It was quite I was quite amazed to see that. It's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, no, it's actually very interesting. This guy, you'll notice, okay, so this is the original. So this is the Hakenkreuz, the swastika under the form of a solar wheel. Okay, so that's a solar wheel. And hold on, this is an interesting quote. I'm still working on this. This is very raw, okay? In his book, Before Hitler Came, in 1933, Subotendorf recalls the esoteric source of his doctrine. He shows that the founders of the National Socialist Party, the Nazis, did not hesitate to borrow their Gnostic inspiration from Islam, a religion still possessing momentum and providing accessibility to the esotericism of ancient Egypt. I've spoken about this before. Islam is not a static religion, quite the contrary. Its vitality is greater than that of Christianity. From whence came its strength? From its hidden origins, from a torrent which nourished everything at the time of primitive Christianity, and which in the Middle Ages gave rise to the most marvelous civilizations. It is not possible to understand this quest at the very source of the great religions, Zoroastrianism, Manichaeism, Buddhism, Islam, unless you are putting yourself within the outlook of the new masters of Germany. So the masters of Germany were looking to all of these esoteric religions for inspiration. And he says here, in their mind, it was essential that any and all means be invoked to rediscover the thread of lost knowledge. And so they could reconstitute page by page the great book of Aryan mythology, because they believed that the church had destroyed these great religions, had destroyed these great civilizations, had destroyed the secret knowledge, and they needed to reclaim it, because apparently that's what Christians do. And he says it must be shown Eastern Freemasonry still retains faithfully, even today, the ancient teachings of wisdom forgotten by modern Western Freemasonry, whose constitution of 1717 was a departure from the true way, the Muslim way of Freemasonry. Your thoughts, Chris, before I break up and we go to our topic?
Just the idea of Eastern Freemasonry taking influence from Islam is fascinating.
Muslim Freemasonry. They claim to have started Freemasonry. That's the thing. They claim to have been the original Freemasons.
That's blown my mind. There's so much to delve into there.
Yeah, so I'll be working on this, and I mean, these guys were connected. They were seriously connected, and yeah, there's so much to cover here. There's so much, but anyway, that's a story for another day.
I just love it. Tea with Hitler. most of the joy I have from these live streams, I swear, is just the titles in your slides. They're so good.
Sorry about that.
I love the puns.
Let me go back to that. Yeah, this was Tea with Hitler. Yeah, this one. I mean, look how timid Hitler looks next to this Baron von Zobottendorf. Look how timid he looks, and look at this guy's face. What do you think of that?
I think Hitler looks very suspicious in that. He looks like I don't know. He's like suspicious of the guy.
Nervous, but doesn't he look nervous? Look, his shoulders are slumped, and he's like, right? So this guy creates the Thule Society, which is an Turkish Islamic Sufi, Freemason Sufi occultic society. Then Hitler joins, and a bunch of Nazis join, and it becomes next year the National Socialist Workers' Party. So this guy founds the Nazi party based on a Muslim. So it's just, you're like, okay, fine, because they're all good Christians, right? So
I really want to bring this stuff up at the corner, because I think it would make for, at the very least, some very interesting and embarrassing conversations for a lot of Muslims who have a very naive view of Hitler and think he was a model spokesperson for Christianity. I think, yeah, that'd be funny to do.
Yeah, so I'm busy working on this and a bunch of others, but yeah, this will be interesting. I also need to do Hitler and Darwin. I need to do Marx and Darwin. Oh, God. Okay, so yeah, so here we are. This is our topic. Thanks all for the patience. I hope that was an interesting, what would you call it, detour?
Very much so. I love that.
Touching on some other stuff, and I'm busy. I mean, look, if you'd like to, we can discuss that particular topic together. I mean, I can, once I have, let's say, about 20, 25 slides already, we can actually have a talk about it. We can stream it together. It'll probably be a long series, but I think 25 slides is enough to do in one episode.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll be definitely up for that.
Because at some point, because he wrote a book called the Secret Practices of Sufi Freemasonry, or Turkish Sufi Muslim Freemasonry. And he talks about how the Quran is actually a book which has coded knowledge, coded language inside it. And those unknown letters, the muqatat letters or whatever of the Quran, those alif, lam, mam, are actually used for secret incantations. And he explains how they work. So it's just like, okay, Islam just gets crazier by the day. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
So, Karan, welcome. Okay. What are the common polemics that Muslims are using? You said at the moment they're using very weak polemics, because I think they're getting their asses handed to them right now. I think Islam is under scrutiny like it's never been. Christianity's been under severe scrutiny for 200 years, and now the Muslims are facing it and they are falling apart. Well, what's your thoughts on that? I'll let you go on that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I think they're, because of the internet primarily, they've had to face a level of criticism they just never had to deal with before. And I think what they're doing is they're borrowing from the Christian tradition to deal with a lot of this, particularly from atheists who are arguing against Islam and against God in general. The amount of times I see Muslims in the corner borrow from things that I've heard many, many years ago from Christian professors, from Christian apologists, and they're passing it off as their own. And it kind of feels a bit like, oh, well, I mean, I'm happy you're using it, but you're kind of stealing it from the Christian tradition, right? We've had this for a long time, and yet here are Muslims who are now borrowing from it to suit their agenda. Now, not all Muslims do that, because there are some Muslims that basically reject any kind of philosophical reasoning for defending Islam, which is kind of interesting. So you have what you call it, in Islamic arguments, you have Muslims arguing with other Muslims about what you can say and what you can't say. Some will accept the first the argument from contingency, some will reject it, some will accept the first cause argument, others will reject it. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have a weird thing there. But they're dealing with the Christian side by borrowing from people like Asakir Naik, Ahmed Dida. Those are still their bread and butter things. They're trying to improve it in ways, but fundamentally they have to go with the things that are very simple and very few words. So how can Jesus be God is just 4 or 5 words. You don't need to say anything else. That's a great argument. The Christian has to spend a bit of time answering you. You can look very intelligent, whereas the Christian has to look like he's explaining things.
So I'll pitch something at you. Okay, so Muslim comes with this, how can Jesus be God, right? Now, this is not done in the spirit of inquiry. This is not an Aristotelian pursuit for truth. This is not the Aristotelian dialectic, right? Where you are asking questions to arrive at truth, to deal with, to find contradictions, to find problems, and to work your way through these things to determine what is true. How do I handle the difficulties I've encountered? This is a polemic. It's designed to undermine. This is sophistry, right? Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, exactly. It is, like you said, a sophistry. I think that's a great word for explaining what this is. It's obfuscation. It's trying to do tactics to get away from whatever you might say as a critique of Islam, to redirect it towards you, to not let the sort of lens light of the camera go anywhere other than you. It has to be about Christianity. Mm-hmm. It can't ever be about Islam. And it can only focus on 1 or 2 topics because they basically only have those, and it's just variants of those. And that's it. And if you want to have a sincere conversation, you can't ask them things. You can't ask them why. Ask a Muslim, has their Quran been perfectly preserved? And if you know a few things, you will absolutely terrify them, and they will cease talking to you, and they'll want to walk. It's kind of very similar if any of you have any experience in talking to people like maybe Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, and you start asking these questions that you know enough about to know it's a weakness of their theology. They don't really have an explanation for you, so a lot of the time they just want to walk away. They want to end the conversation, they want to call it a day, and just that's it. Don't ever talk to you again.
Okay, that's
pretty much how they deal with it.
So on this point, I mean, you're the guy in the trenches. Now, here's the thing. It's part of the woke ideology, right? And I mean, we can trace this to Gnosticism, and Gnosticism we can trace to Islam, or Islam we can trace to Gnosticism. But if you look at critical theory, right, which is based on Marxism, right, which is based on Gnosticism, which, etc., etc., but critical theory is about criticizing things. Now, when you say, okay, fine, so you don't like this approach, what is the solution? They give you woolly answers. They dodge, they avoid, they can't, but they can criticize you whole day. It's like grievance mongering to the nth degree, but they don't have a clear answer. The same with Islam. They will criticize and attack Christianity, but they cannot offer a cohesive, coherent, solid case for why we should be Muslims. They can't present a clear case. If Muhammad was so moral, exactly, why are they having a problem selling him to us? If Muhammad was so perfect, exactly, why this issue? Well, so I mean,
this is kind of why they won't even talk about Muhammad. Like that like the only time they'll talk about Muhammad is if they think that you're already halfway there. Then they might bring up Muhammad. But before that, they will honestly just introduce Islam as Islam just means Tawheed. It just means there is one God. That's all Islam means. And they dumb Islam down to the point where it's basically just an equivalent word for monotheism. And that's how they get around these awkward conversations, because they know full well that most people in the West have heard things about Islam, right? They've heard things like, oh, you can have up to 4 wives. or oh, you can do inappropriate things with children, or oh, you can do X, Y, and Z. Chopping hands off, all these things. They know roughly what Sharia is. They know it's probably a bad thing. They might not know all the ins and outs, but they know that they've heard some stuff and it doesn't sound very good. So to avoid that, they start off with this idea that no, forget all that. Islam is just Tawheed. It's just monotheism. It's just one God. And then they'll contrast this with the Christian belief and they'll say, oh, in Christianity, it's so confusing. Oh, I don't understand it. There's three gods, but one God. Oh, I'm so confused. But thank Allah that there's only one God in Islam, and it's so simple. Oh. And you can actually, I was watching a David Wood live stream earlier, and he was talking with Apostate Prophet about some guy called Sneeko, I think he's called. And Sneeko was this guy who became a Muslim, and he was asked why he became a Muslim. And one of the first things he said, and I knew he was going to say it, was, Islam just means believing in one God. And I thought, wow, okay. That's hilarious, right? If all you really want from a religion is just one God, then that's not an argument for Islam. That's just an argument for monotheism.
Give me one moment. Give me 1 sec, Chris. I'll be right back.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. My apologies. On this point, I want to mention, someone said I should show you this. So what few people are aware of is that the term Tawheed is Ethiopic in origin. It comes from the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawhedo Church. So the ancient Ge'ez is the closest, philologically, I think that's the word. I've covered this before on other shows, to Arabic. And
okay.
So the term Tawheed, the Tawhedo Church, is so remember during the first Hijrah, Muhammad sent his people to Ethiopia. They stayed there for 15 years and then they joined them in Medina. So the Tawhedo is the unity of God. Unity referring to a unity of more than one, right? A complex unity, a multiple unity. So this refers to, they have a different word for the Trinity, but the Tawheed, so they borrowed the word Tawhedo, as we know that the word, so you've got the word Echad. I did a short video on that on my channel. Echad, right, means one of many, right? A bunch of grapes is Echad. A man and a woman joined together is Echad, one from many, right? Whereas, of course, you have Ahad, which is the Arabic word, which is also one of. So they've actually borrowed these words from Judaism, one of, Echad, this word here from the Bible, basically, and they've borrowed this word from the Tawhedo Church. Did you know about that?
Interesting. So I did, and it actually comes from you. So I saw some of your videos before where you went into this, and I find it fascinating. So whenever a Muslim says, Islam is just one God, it really is just that. They try and describe it like it's a monad, like Allah is just this one entity with nothing defining his nature, really. But then when you point out, no, what you really mean by Tawheed is you really mean unity.
Yeah.
And smart Muslims now will accept that and say, yes, that is what we mean.
Unity of what? If it's a monad, it's a unity of what?
Yeah. Well, if they're clever, they'll say something like, it's the unity of him and his all of his attributes. Something like that.
Yeah, but then his attributes are separate from him.
They are, right. And this is
then you've got a logical fallacy. Before we get into that,
yep.
Something that Muslims have been telling me lately, right? When they say, why, they'll tell me something about Jesus. Where does the Bible say Jesus is God? And I'll say, hold on, wait. First of all, you don't have Jesus in your Bible. You have Isa, who is the Gnostic Jesus. And then I will say, why are you talking to me about the Gnostic Jesus from the 3rd to the 5th century? Because all of the Christology in your sources are from Gnostic sources from the 3rd to 5th century. Why are you repeating known, fallacious, Gnostic, heretical stories taken from sources outside of Christianity? And inevitably they go silent and just things stop. What do you think of that as a reply to them? Because turn it around. How do we turn it around onto them and it just nullify the argument? Because they're constantly pushing at us. They're constantly putting us on the back foot. And I'm like, no, I'm not playing that game.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it as well. So I actually, I typically go to what you were just alluding to, which is the problem with his attributes. Because, in all honesty, Muslims tend to be very confused. If you think Muslims don't know much about the Trinity, they know even less about Allah and what his nature is, if he even has a nature. Is he his 99 attributes, or is he other than his 99 attributes, or exactly how does it work? But I think you're right. I think just pointing out that the Isa that they have is not Jesus, but rather coming from these Gnostic sources. And I think the great thing about that as a reply is it opens the gate for so much dialogue about other very embarrassing and challenging things. Like, for example, why is the Quran borrowing from these Gnostic sources?
Yeah.
I thought the Quran came from Allah. Does this mean that on the eternal tablet with Allah, does it have these Gnostic sources on it? If you think about it, I mean, it opens this weird case of, hang on, there's this relationship between Gnostic sources from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, however many centuries, and the eternal tablet, because they're found in the Quran, which is meant to be a perfect representation of the eternal tablet.
Yes.
Which then means somehow these Gnostics have figured out parts of the Quran before Muhammad did, which is an interesting conversation to have. And Muslims don't really like that too much.
I wonder if everyone saw my little talk I did on yesterday. Shabir Ali admitting that the 5 prayers a day from Islam does match exactly the 5 prayers a day in Zoroastrianism. And he says, well, Zoroaster could well be a prophet from Allah. Who are we to say? Because he could be a prophet from Allah. And you're like, that is insane.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, I did a short video on that. Hold on, let me bring up something. You speak of tablet. I want to go to this. This is from the Encyclopaedia of Islam, Volume 3. Right? Encyclopaedia of Islam. I want to go here. Have you heard of Hermes Trismegistus, Chris?
I'm going to say no.
Okay, so Hermes Trismegistus is... This story is all over the place. It's hysterically funny. I've got a bunch of notes I need to do a show on. But Hermes Trismegistus is a god. He is known as... He is Thoth. You've heard of Thoth, the Egyptian god?
Yes.
Hermes. So he is Thoth, the Egyptian god Thoth. He is also Hermes, the Greek god. He's also Mercury, the Roman god. He's also sometimes Enoch, or an incarnation of Enoch. But he is also Idris, the second prophet mentioned in the Quran. So Hermes Trismegistus is supposedly a contemporary of Muhammad. And as a contemporary of Moses. He's a contemporary of Moses, supposedly. Right? But, I mean, that's just the story. But the earliest records for him really go back to about 300 BC, 200 BC or so. And then, of course, the Greeks come in. And basically, so let's have a quick look. So, Hermes, that strange god incarnate on the one hand, the Hellenistic name of the Egyptian god Thoth, and also he's the author of philosophical, scientific, and magical works. So he supposedly taught writing. He brought knowledge. And the word hikmah, so he passed in both of his capacities in terms of science, occult science, and magic into Islam. Islam transformed the god into one of the heroes of the olden times, who, according to his name, Trismegistus, al-Mutalath bil-Hikmah, he brought the hikmah into Islam. So Hermes Trismegistus, the pagan god, the pagan Egyptian god, brings the hikmah into Islam. He brings the wisdom because he holds the secret of the ages. This is the Hermetic god. Okay. Now, if you look up Madame Blavatsky, right? If you've heard of Theosophy, if you've heard of, hold on, let me just bring this up. So, guys, if you look up Theosophy, right, and you go look up Madame Blavatsky, right? You've heard of her, right, Chris?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, hang on. You must have seen a picture of her in your life. So the thing is, I would rather go on the offensive against Islam. So let me bring this up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is Madame. Everyone has seen pictures of this woman. She's the founder of Theosophy, which is basically an occult religion, okay, which claims to obviously reject Christianity, and it talks about all the occult stuff. This is her. You must have seen these pictures of her.
that does look familiar.
Okay, so she preaches this Hermetic tradition. Okay, and Muslims claim that this guy is the second prophet in the Quran. The first Hermes is identified with Enoch and Idris. So this guy has I don't know exactly how it works, but he has incarnations. Now the later Islamic scholars claim it's Enoch, Ahnuch, okay? They claim it's Enoch. But if you go to the earlier scholars, they claim it is Hermes Trismegistus, that Idris is Hermes, not Enoch. So basically, wow. So they associate the second, wow, Shabir, thank you, will prove word count miracles after he retrieves and includes verses, okay, whatever. So they claim that Idris, the second prophet in the Quran, is Hermes Trismegistus, who is this Hermetic Greek god Thoth and Greek and Egyptian god.
Wow, yeah, that is interesting.
So it's just that.
So what source is this? Is this the Encyclopedia of Islam, or which?
Encyclopedia of Islam, Volume 3. This is the Encyclopedia of Islam, Volume 3.
They have so much stuff that, I mean, yeah, just there's so much stuff that just isn't known that people really need to talk about and bring up.
So maybe we should tell them, look, about your prophets. Why is Idris Hermes? Why Hermes is Hermes Trismegistus? He's an occult god. He's used by groups like the Nazis and others as an occult source of wisdom and magic and occultism. Why do you have him listed as your second prophet in the Quran?
Wow, yeah. I mean, that is a very, very good point.
You know, we aren't asking questions because Islam has gotten away for so long with pretending to be very pious and holy. And actually, when you start to look, the whole connections to magic, the occult, the Nazis, is so blatant. Maybe, how would you use this information in terms of your polemics?
So actually, it would literally be to get that source, find where that's quoted, and then show what that guy was and all that stuff, and how that's completely incompatible with what they think their deen is. I think a lot of Muslims have a very naive view. They think it's all, roses and just beautiful tawheed, nothing more. That's all it is. 5 prayers, sure thing. But it's just so much more to their history. The whole the dabbling with the occult and Freemasonry, thinking that a place is not Enoch, but that guy, that's crazy.
Yeah, I just realized that.
Freely available.
My apologies to interrupt. I just realized I read that donation wrong. Shabir will prove word count miracles after he retrieves and includes verses eaten by goat. Yes, sorry about that. Thank you. Yes. What is interesting, the whole 19, the number 19 is very important in Islam, right? The number 19 is critically important in Islam. Few people realize that the Kaaba is oriented north, south, east, west. Okay, it's not exactly, but the main corner of the Kaaba is oriented on the setting point of the of Canopus, the brightest star in the southern hemisphere. It's actually oriented on that. It's actually astronomically oriented. And then, of course, you've got, with the other orientations, that aligns to the setting of the sun on the winter solstice, and then another point aligns to the sun on the summer solstice and stuff like that. It's actually aligned like Stonehenge. It's actually aligned like a megalith. Okay. And the number 19 is that every 19 years, the sun rises at a particular point, or the sun sets at a particular point, and it aligns itself exactly to the Kaaba every 19 years. And this is probably why the number 19 is important to Islam.
Right, interesting. I know there's a lot of claims of the number 19 being a miracle number you can find in the Quran and all these sorts of things. But yeah, the miracle stuff in Quran is really bad, really bad, and definitely going to do a video on that at some point.
Corin asked me, they'll simply say, is it in the Quran? And if it's not, they'll neglect it. My response to this is to say, is the Shahada with Momo in the Quran? Okay, show me where the Shahada with Mo is, because you say the Shahada with Mo's name, you associate him, which is shirk, with Allah. Where is that in the Quran? Right? And Allah does not accept you if you don't add Mo into the Shahada. Where's that in the Quran? Show me. Okay, Muhammad had how many wives? Where are Mo's wives named in the Quran? Where are the 5 daily prayers listed in the Quran? I hit them with this and I never get answers.
It's a really good point. So there are some things that they will try and do, mostly just about that first one, about the Shahada. They'll claim that they can make the Shahada by taking two different parts of the Quran. If you combine them together, you get something like a Shahada. That's a really weak argument. But what I like to do as well is I like to say, show me, just ask them, do you think that Muhammad was sinless? Most Muslims will say yes. And then say, okay, can you show me a verse in the Quran that says Muhammad was sinless? And the problem with this is that there are tons of verses that say that Muhammad sinned and he had his sins forgiven. So you can bring those out, and they come up with the most interesting interpretations of those verses. They'll say things like, "Oh no, you see, what sin actually means here is it means minor error, like you dropped something by accident. That's what sin means."
Yeah. No. I just told them, I don't want your interpretation. Show me in those words in the Quran.
Oh, yeah.
In those words.
And they have no way of getting out of it. And then the other one I would like is, you believe that Muhammad, he went to the seven heavens, right, in the Miraj.
Yeah.
Can you tell me where the Miraj is in the Quran? And they can't. It's not in there.
I know.
So they have the night journey, the Isra, I believe it's called, in chapter 17. But is the chapter 17 never mentions the Miraj. The Miraj comes from a later tradition found in Hadith. So, simply saying, look, you know what, maybe you have a great point about not finding explicitly where Jesus says, in these words, he is God. Can you just show me where one of your major doctrines, like the idea that the Muhammad did the Miraj, can you show me that in those exact words in the Quran? And they can't. It's just game over. It's like, well, and it's kind of silly, isn't it? The idea of having to have these exact words. So it's just like an empty polemic.
Do they sound weak once you hit them with these? Because when I do it online, I tend to get silence from these people. In fact, most of the time, they don't want to engage with me these days.
So there are some videos you can watch. Not too long ago, Speaker's Corner, I think this might be on the Soko Films channel for anyone who wants to check out Speaker's Corner content with debates with Christians and Muslims. There's a debate with me talking to a guy about this, and I try to explain to him, look, you saying to me, show me where it says Jesus is God, or Jesus says in these exact words, I am God in the Bible. Show me that. And I said, okay, well, I'll show you that as soon as you show me where it says in the Quran where it says Muhammad is sinless. And he can't, and so he tries to divulge. And I go, no, actually, I have some verses here. And then I get my phone out and I look at these specific verses where it actually says that Muhammad did sin in the Quran. And then they go, okay, well, no. What you see, what it means by sin is that he made a mistake. And I'm like, right, okay, so can you tell me where it says that in the Quran?
Where does it? I asked them, I say, hey, you know what? Mo died, he stank, and he was buried. Right? I say Jesus was rescued by Allah. Jesus was taken up to heaven. Mo was poisoned, died, stank, and was buried. I like,
yeah.
Why did Jesus get special treatment from Allah and Mo was allowed to simply die horribly?
That's actually probably one of the best arguments, especially from someone who doesn't really have the time to go deep into this stuff. If you just want to get into a conversation with a Muslim, or maybe you've found yourself somehow talking with a da'i, or maybe someone online in a little chat forum somewhere, whatever it might be, just ask them, look, according to all these things, right, Jesus was, he was, the only woman mentioned in the Quran is Mary. Mary is venerated. Jesus is venerated. Jesus is saved by Allah. Muhammad is not saved by Allah. Muhammad sinned, whereas in their belief, they think that Jesus was sinless. So you have all of these things. How is it that you think that Muhammad has any candle that he can hold in comparison to Jesus? And they won't be able to answer that. Not really. They'll have to kind of give.
It says Jesus was sinless, his mother was sinless, and Jesus was born of a virgin. What about Mo?
Wait, didn't in his mother's womb it shined a light so bright they could see it from Basra or something?
Yes, 1,300 kilometers. He shone a light so bright from his mother's vajayjay that it shone. And you got to ask yourself, was she on top of a mountain at the time? Were there eyewitnesses? Was she indoors at this point?
Like ships out to sea could really benefit from.
I know. And this was a question from Villainous, which is really good. Why is Mo in the Shahada? Can you worship Allah without Mo? And the answer is no, you cannot.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. The fact I believe there are two verses, ayah, in the Quran where it specifically says, look, I think one is like, once Allah and his messenger have decided on something, you cannot go against it. And it's like, wait. Why is Muhammad deciding with Allah? Why did he not just say, once Allah has decided something, you cannot go against it? Why is he including himself there? And the other one is, I can't remember the other verse, but it says something very similar. And it's the fact that he injects himself into the belief with Allah in a very direct way.
Right.
And because of that, you ultimately have to raise Muhammad to the level of Allah, which is shirk.
Correct. Okay, so hold on. We've got some of these. Okay, we've tackled that. I mean, so some of these, which ones are interesting? Because for the audience as well. I mean, thanks for the contributions. But so you gave me these because you thought these were some of the more critical ones, right? To worship one God. We know that Islam is submission, and they tend to use it also very generally because by that same token, Buddhism, a Buddhist, is also a Muslim because he just submits to his God.
Yeah.
Right? It's a really broad, lame definition. It doesn't mean it. Islam means submission to Allah.
Yeah. And when you go into context of what that submission looks like, then it starts to get more and more Islamy, more clear. Like, this is not just monotheism anymore. This is not just nice tawheed. It's all these rules, all these things you have to do, all these things you have to believe. You can't go against Muhammad in any matter whatsoever, which puts him same level as Allah. And it's like, oh, it's not looking good. I think, let's have a look at some of these. So the Quran is perfectly preserved. I think this one is a particularly weak one for Muslims. And it kind of comes into contrast with the Bible has been corrupted, and that's their sort of favorite. I guess that's like their second or third most common go-to. And I think the interesting thing here is you have to remember that embedded in this is certain assumptions they make about Christianity. Most Muslims don't know much about Christianity. They think that Christianity basically has the same view of inspiration that they do. So they think that what Christians believe is that the Bible came down from heaven, and it is the word of God because it came down from heaven, that Jesus received it somehow, but somehow it was edited by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and now you've lost it, and the Injil is lost. The Injil is just the gospel, and that's it. That's all they think it is. But when you explain to them the proper understanding
they
of
think
Christian
Jesus
doctrine,
brought a book.
Yes, they actually do believe in a book, which is odd. I had a Muslim try to explain to me in the Bible, in the Gospel of Matthew, how apparently it mentions this, and it doesn't at all. But for some reason, he thought it did.
Go on.
What were you saying, Lloyd?
No, I asked them. I said, "Look, do you have a copy of the Injil for me to prove your statement? Please give me a copy of the Injil." And then also, when they say the Bible is corrupt, and then they start quoting the Bible. Actually, when they start quoting the Bible to me, I say, "Stop. The Bible is corrupt. Why are you quoting a corrupt book?" Right?
Yeah.
And two, they'll start really quoting. They'll say, "Well, the Bible this, the Bible that," and they'll start whatever bad thing they can claim about the Bible. They'll start claiming it, and then I'll go, "Wait, hold on. That's in today's Bible, right? The corrupt Bible. It was completely different in the other Bible that's uncorrupted. So if you can give me a copy of that one, because today's Bible's corrupted, therefore that is wrong." Right? So, and it's like, it's fair enough. I mean, that's their own argument used against them. It seems to work, but your thoughts on that?
It is good. It's really good. And it's something that we should remember to bring up. Like, they cannot appeal to the Bible or to critique aspects of our theology that they are getting from the Bible, and at the same time turn around and say, we believe this has been corrupted. Because if you're doing that, then why are you quoting it to me? It has you literally don't think that's what it originally said. And worse yet, your Quran, in places like Surah 3, Ayah 3, or Surah 5, Ayah 43 to 48, make it clear that the previous scriptures, that includes both the Torah and the Injil and the Psalms, are preserved, and that Muhammad at least believed that at the time. This makes Islam in a really difficult position where they know full well now that the Injil and the Torah and the Psalms go against their theology. They say nothing like what Muhammad said, but they have to affirm it because the Quran says so. And I think this is like the biggest plunder the Quran makes, or at least one of them anyway. And it's really good to bring that up and to show them that, look, you can't quote this anymore if you think it's corrupt. That makes no sense.
I told them, look, I mean, you take it off the board. I mean, look, the thing is, this is not an inquiry to seek truth. They are practicing something that's called, as I've mentioned before, adab al-jadal, right? It is a form of sophist rhetoric designed to undermine you, designed to undermine your argument. It's sophistry, designed to win. It is not designed to find truth. This is defined within the Encyclopaedia of Islam as a practice that dates to the 9th century, right? Something that became formalized in Islam. So this is their way of dealing with controversial issues. It is designed to destroy the argument, not... So we need to be smart and utilize their own arguments against them, because I don't want to... Defense does not win fights. We are in a fight. Defense does not win fights. The Omnist Hour is here. He believes... it's a bunch of nonsense that he believes, or nonsense. Yep, the guy's into his nonsense. So...
Yeah, I saw some of the comments.
Yeah, we found the heretic, so yeah, it's complete idiocy, but anyway, what can you do? It's not that it takes all sorts, it's just sadly you get all kinds.
Yeah, I definitely see. Yeah, I've seen similar things, similar nonsense things.
Yeah, let's...
Just jumping to what you were saying, it's about offense. You're right. I think that one of the mistakes I made when I first started debating publicly at Speaker's Corner was I thought, well, I can do this from a defensive point of view, and I can do that first because it'll take less time. So I started to study defensive stuff, and that works fine. But the issue is that to the mindset of Islam, that's still a loss, because in their mind, if you're not speaking as much as the other person is speaking, if you're not raising these questions as much as the other person is, then you're just by default losing. It doesn't matter how good you do. It doesn't matter how well articulated, how scholarly, how anything. None of that matters. What matters is how much can you ask them and put them on the back foot.
That's exactly. Look, I was... my background comes from... I come from a security background. I'm not like... I just find too many people don't realize, first of all, you're dealing with Islam, which is aggressive like crazy. 2, you're dealing with a third world mindset. Now, I come from the third world. I grew up in the third world. The third world does not respect your wonderful arguments. The third world has no respect for that. People. I used to listen. Excuse my French here, but I listen to middle class white people talk about Christian Prince is so foul mouthed. Oh my God! It's just like, oh no. It's how can he speak? Oh! This is so wrong. He needs to hug them, and he needs to give them cookies and milk and give them a kissy and wash their feet maybe, and then he'll win them over with the... Sorry, no. The third world mindset does not respect that. First,
absolutely.
You punch them in the face, which is what Christian Prince does, then they respect you. You want to get their attention. You first beat them down, then you can talk nice to them. You first humble them. Sorry, but you are using your mindset. You're not thinking with their mindset. You've got it wrong. Yeah. And I'm really sorry to say this, but you've got it completely backwards. No wonder you're getting your ass kicked, and no wonder you're having your cities overrun, your women raped, and of course men can get pregnant now. Sorry, but you're gonna need to start finding your inner asshole, and you got to bring him out a little bit. I'm not sure if that's in Mark or Matthew somewhere, but that's what I think. Chris, back to you.
You have to be bold, and proclaim things and do it in a way that is not just, like you said, cookies and milk. You need to get onto theological meat, and you need to engage in things that are serious. And part of that is to actually just say things how they are. You need to be like, look, I've been studying this. I know about your faith. I know about the things that your faith teaches you. You might not know it. Maybe you do, and maybe you're just propagating lies to other Muslims by telling them it's all okay. Aisha was really 21, and I don't know, a middle-aged woman with... Just
ask them, show me the Sahih Hadith that shows she was 19.
Yeah, exactly.
Show me the Sahih Hadith.
Never. Actually, it's funny. If you push them on that, a lot of the time they'll be like, okay, I'll look for it. And then you just wait and nothing happens. It's kind of like you have to tell them. It's like, by the way, the reason we've been waiting 5 minutes is because it's not there. Yeah. Like you would have thought that, if you're Googling it and you still haven't found it after 5 minutes, and you would have thought this would be like a big button issue. And it's like, you can't find it. It's not there. Let me find all the ones that say she was 6 and then consummated at 9. And I can find that in about 3 seconds. It's like, well, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah, look, this is... Yeah, no. Do you find look, we've tried the nice way, and I'm not saying to be rude, and I'm not saying to be nasty, but but something I learned when I was younger, that I was taught, you cannot teach love to someone who's trying to stab you in the stomach with a knife. Now, I wouldn't say that's happened to me. It's almost happened to me, but I have had people try to shoot me in the, well, I have had people try to blow my head off, and I'm still here to talk about it. That was the job I was in, right? So there are times when you have to go on the defensive. There are times you have to preempt. Being defensive is not all, you do not win fights by being defensive. Eventually, at some point, they'll get through. We've tried this. We need to go on the offensive. We need to reverse the logic on them. We need to go take the fight to them. We need to use polemics, not apologetics. Would you agree with me? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I learned this kind of firsthand with, engaging with Muslims, both in a crowd environment at the corner and also just privately as well. Like even when you have private conversations with Muslims, you actually do need to be quite, look, this is how it is. I'm not going to back down from this. I'm not going to just whisper like nice things to you, because it's just not going to work. You need to engage them and say, look, Allah is not just one. He's actually a unity of things, including his eternal word and his spirit and the word of Allah. These things are a multiplicity in Allah. You don't have Tawheed. You don't have one God. You have all these things. How are you going to deal with it? And I think they kind of respect you if you can show that you know a lot about their religion and you've studied. I've had Muslims come up to me, and it's quite interesting. They say, Chris, I don't agree with you. I'm not a Christian. I'm a Muslim, and I have been since I was born. But you know what? I like what you do, and I like what you say, because you're obviously looking into this, and you know all this stuff, and it's interesting that you bring this up, and I learned from it. I'm like, wow, we appreciate that. But so interestingly, you can get respect by showing that you have something to respect. And I think part of that is just by being bold and saying, yeah, I've studied this, and I'm going to meet you on your ground. Yeah. I'm not going to just engage in, I guess what you might call is like typical evangelism. Like, so sometimes I think Christians make the mistake of thinking the way that evangelism works in the West is the same. It will work everywhere else. And that's not really the case. Different groups, different people have different ways that you engage in their culture. Yeah. And the Islamic culture is a different kind of culture.
It respects aggression. Yeah. It sees our humility as weakness. It preys on that. And I mean in a predatory fashion, it preys on that.
I agree.
You have to establish dominance. And I think this is something Western men have forgotten. I'm not saying everyone, but too many Western men they don't know how to establish dominance. They don't know how to be dominant and aggressive. I grew up in Africa, different story. I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. So yeah, I think I understand this. If I hadn't had that level of aggression, I may not even be alive today, right? I was in a job where I had to own the space I was in. My life and the life of people around me were at risk. So I understand this in terms of social dominance, in terms of establishing something that people don't also realize. Muslims, when they shout and scream, they're making a spectacle. They're creating entertainment, right? Yeah. People remember the spectacle. You also have to, in a sense, create entertainment. They don't respect logos. They don't respect logic and facts. They respect the whole sophistry, the whole narrative, the whole story, the whole performance. You've got to give people a performance. You've got to be seen to win. Would that be a true statement?
No, it absolutely is. Like completely. It's rhetoric. It's they want the soundbite where they ask you a question and you take a second to think. Like as that really is a lot of what it boils down to. They aren't looking for truth, and you can watch it in some of the da'is that the way they approach. They look for people who are new. They look for visitors to the park, people who haven't been there for a while, who don't know the ropes, who don't know the kind of things they're going to engage with. And they form crowds. And to be honest with you, it's it's really intimidating, because you can get like 20, 30 Muslims surrounding you, forming a circle around you. So now it's just you and the person you're talking to, and they're very close to you. And, put it this way, if it's winter and it gets dark sooner, then you have the problem where there's no lights. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, you've been talking to this person for like an hour or two. There's a ton of cameras. You can't really see what's going on anymore because it's now dark. And, all it takes is like someone to say something behind you that's just a little bit off, and it can be quite intimidating. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of how they deal with this kind of stuff. They they want to make a spectacle, a show. They want to capture it on camera, and they use it to control a narrative and to present Islam as simpler, better, whatever they feel like doing that day.
Cogito said something interesting. They need to be shamed publicly because, look, they're trying to shame you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shame is a very powerful force. They need to be seen to lose. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. So just to add real quick, one thing that I think is effective is don't ever walk away. If possible, there are some exceptions to that, but for a lot of the time, if you think, oh, okay, I'm going to shake their hand, say I've had enough, and then politely leave, and that'll be fine. What actually happens is they just record you walking away, and then they'll frame it as you ran away from the debate. It's as childish as this. So one thing that we will do is, okay, if you're going to play by those rules, we'll accept those rules, and then we'll engage in a debate. We bring the stuff that we know. We go on the offensive. And when they can't deal with that, they then want to run away, which happens a lot. Mm-hmm. And then we say, look, and we shout out to the crowd, look, this person, Mansour, Hashim, look, they're running. Like, what's his name? Shamsi, Speedy Gonzalez, we call him. Like, he runs away a lot. So we point that out. We say, look, Muslims, you're watching this. Here is a da'i who you respect. He is running away from the Christians. Why is he doing that? And that's effective. And that is an effective thing to do. And it's important to do in that kind of environment because it's a aggressive, combative position that you're in. And being, I'm not going to say meek, but like tame and unresponsive and polite. Like it's no place for like the British etiquette of politeness. It's just not going to get you enough. It might do if you're having a one-on-one privately with a Muslim who's having doubts. That happens quite a bit, and that's a whole different thing, right? Like there are no cameras, it's private, we've gone to the side somewhere, it's just me and this person speaking. I have a much more different conversation with them than I would if I was in front of a crowd or if I was in front of others or there were cameras or whatnot.
All right. Interesting. Wow. Thank you very much, Crystals. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful. Thank you very kindly. Yeah. So on to some of the other questions that may be important to people. Like, I mean, this is a 4-hour discussion on its own. That Paul never taught the same message of Jesus. That's the gospel. Lately, Alonzo Harris. Look, those of you who know me will probably know that I've concluded after my time with Alonzo that Alonzo is a female. Alonzo Harris is a female. Now, I have invited Alonzo twice. They failed to show up twice to meet with me to have these talks. Okay. By the way, Crystal says thank you for the hard work you do and teach us. God bless. No, thank you. And I do it for you, and I hope everyone learns from this and uses this. And there's so much more material that I've got that's coming that I want to educate people to show them this. Islam has its weaknesses. Christianity, we have something that is so much better, right?
Amen.
And so on this, Alonzo Harris is a female. That's why she never appears in public to talk to anyone. Lately, she's been appearing with the name Twitherspoon, right? She's been using the name Twitherspoon, claiming to be an agnostic. But this agnostic is hell-bent on destroying and attacking Christianity in every way possible. Lately, she's been using arguments from Bruno Bauer. Bruno Bauer is an arch-atheist. I have a short video on him on my channel, came out last week. It's like 5 minutes long. He's an arch-atheist. He hated Christianity and he attacked Christianity, and he created a bunch of very fallacious historical polemics. And Twitherspoon, Alonzo, is now using his arguments. So this guy was a mentor and friend to Karl Marx. Okay, so he developed these polemics, and she is now repeating these polemics. Now, whenever I come across Twitherspoon, I'll say, "Hey, Alonzo, how's it going?" And I'll start saying, "Do you remember the time that you claimed that Jerusalem was only founded in the 1600s?" Which, yes, that actually happened.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. And they'll claim that there are no early historical records that are reliable, which means that literally anything from the time of Jesus and prior is now history that is simply fantasy and myth.
Wow.
Right. They've literally written it because nothing is reliable at that period, and so on. So understand, they're using, and also the Soviets used Bruno Bauer's arguments as anti-Christian polemics. So this is what's happening now. If you've got to lie about who you are and what you're doing, then, I mean, good grief. If you've got to refer to Karl Marx's buddies, and maybe arguments a week. Yeah. So of these, which other one? Which is the next one you'd like to discuss on this list?
There is one thing that I was thinking about before this live stream, and I think it's quite important to clear up, because if you make this mistake, Muslims will punish you for it. And it's very simple. They will always come up with their argument is, how can God die? How can God die? And what they're really getting at here is they're basically using the word die, and they're equivocating it with cease to exist.
Right.
So they're basically saying, how can God cease to exist? Now, they won't phrase it that way, because then you'll be like, wait, what? We don't believe God ceased to exist. What are you talking about? But they're saying, can God die? Secretly meaning cease to exist. So the first thing you want to do is you want to say, what do you mean by die? And then they'll be kind of, if they're honest, they'll say, okay, well, really, I mean cease to exist. And you say, whoa, that's not what we as Christians think. We think that dying is a separation of body and spirit. That's what we think. So, and then the question becomes, how can God have some meaningful way in which he enjoins to himself the fullness of humanity, and then that humanity dies in its flesh? Like, that would be the question. But when you explain it that way, they get very uncomfortable because you didn't fall for the trap. So it's a really common one, really basic stuff, but it's always important that you don't fall into the trap of just saying, did God die? And then just saying, like, yes, because the way you're thinking of it is not the way they're thinking of it. They're intentionally equivocating the word with cease to exist.
So they're intentionally misrepresenting the argument and then attacking a false argument.
Yeah, it's a very simple one. It's a very simple one to fall into. Some Christians, if you come to the corner, I've seen lots of videos on soccer films of them of making that mistake, and then it leads to a whole thing of, oh, well, you believe God can die. This is absurd. Your religion is absurd. And you're like, wait, no, that's not what I mean. What I really mean is this. And then it takes ages, and they've already got you on the back foot, and now you're defending when really there was a ton of things that you could have attacked. So
I tend not to play their game. It's one of the things I do not want to do is I do not want to play their game. Look, I come from this. Okay, you get people who are evangelical. I'm sorry to say this, and I don't want to overstate it, but I'm tactical. Okay, there's a difference, right? So if this was a firefight, I'd have shot them in the face already. So this is I have a different approach now. I know that, look, if we're in a fight and they started the fight, I didn't start the fight, but I'm going to play by their rules, right? when they come at me with those stories, I lost my thread. I shouldn't have gone off topic. What was the last point that you made, please, Chris? If you can just remind me. Why can God die?
That was
I'll simply ask them. I'll say, why do you? One of the things I'll ask them, and I forgot the second one, but I'll say, why do you need to kill for your God? And then I'll start going into jihad. Right? Why does your God require you to kill? So I'll turn it around immediately and throw it at them, and then I'll go into the Sharia. But obviously, then again, they will refuse to engage with me because they don't want to talk. They cannot talk about the Sharia. There's another answer I would give, but your thoughts on that? On how do you turn it around? How would you turn that argument back on them, put them on the back foot, embarrass them?
So my favorite one lately is just to point out that why did your God deceive like all of humanity into creating Christianity? Given that through Allah, he deceived the people into thinking that Jesus was crucified when he actually wasn't. That means that he is directly responsible for the creation of Christianity. And that means that there are now billions of people in the world who are destined for Jahannam because Allah determined it. Something like that I find quite interesting. They don't really have answers for that. It becomes really difficult. It gets even more difficult when there's hadith that talks about how Jews and Christians will be thrown into the hellfire in the place of Muslims. That gets quite difficult as well for them. There's a ton of different places that you can go to. You can just go to some really simple things. Like there are many things that many people probably know, and sometimes it's just good enough to bring it up. So you've probably heard about like dunking flies in water.
Yes.
Because one wing has the cure, one wing has the disease. Just throw that up and just say, can you explain that to me? and just watch, because there isn't any real response they can give apart from, look, be like Keith, we just accept what Allah has revealed to us. We don't really ask questions. Maybe one day science will prove that that's totally right, and that's all they have. There is nothing else to it. It's just an appeal to mysticism. And as soon as they do, and they just say, look, we both believe in God. Only God can give answers to this. We don't have an issue with that. Then say, okay, fine. Then I will use the exact same reason for anything you throw at me.
On that point, when they talk about Abrahamic faith,
yeah,
if you go into the Sira, and I've covered this extensively on my channel before, they'll say we all come from the Abrahamic faith, except Islam rejects Christianity and Judaism. They claim that Abraham never created Judaism, that Avram the Ivri, Abraham the Hebrew, never created the line of the Jews. They claim that never happened. He never began Judaism as a religion. And also they claim that they follow the religion of Abraham before Yahwism. Before. Okay, so in the Bible you have Abraham follows Yahweh. He starts this cult of Yahwism, right? And then of course that develops. Whereas they claim that they worship what Abraham worshipped before that happened. Now, of course, according to the Jews, Abraham was a Sabaean. So I bring up the fact that the Sabaeans were the Yemenis, the Yemeni pagan moon god worshippers who worshipped the god called Al-Makkah. Right? Al-Makkah, who was also known as Sin, the Babylonian moon god. Right? The Babylonian moon god Shin. Right? So this is what they claim Abraham worships. So when they speak of we're both Abrahamic, they don't mean that they follow Allah. That they follow Yahweh. They mean that so it's actually a play on words. This is something you need to raise, because they're actually lying to you. They're misrepresenting what they mean by Abraham and Abrahamic. So they claim that Abraham, and this is all covered in their Sira. So that's a completely different religion that they're following. Your thoughts on that, Chris, before I answer one or two questions in the chat?
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think from my experience, it's often a not really a polemic. It's just a silly thing they say about their religion that invites others who are less knowledgeable to it. So they'll say, "Oh yeah, Jesus was a Muslim." That's like one of their favorite catchphrases. Jesus is a Muslim, and it's like, okay, and if they don't mention Jesus, it'll be Abraham. Abraham was a Muslim. Moses was a Muslim. All these people are all Muslims, and then you ask them to say, okay, well, what actually is a Muslim then? And then they dumb it down and they say, well, Islam just means that it's someone who thinks that there's only one God. And it's like, okay, well, Satan thinks there's only one God. So was Satan a Muslim? Like, well, okay, well, actually, what I mean is that Islam just means submission to Allah, to God. Okay, well, do you think babies are Muslims? Because of fitra, yes, we believe fitna, we believe that babies are Muslims. Okay, so how are babies in submission to God? What is it particularly that babies are doing that shows submission? And then they can't really give you an answer to that question.
Babies tend to lie down like Muslims on their faces. I don't know, maybe that.
Oh yeah. I saw like a 2-month-old just doing the yeah. He was bowing down to the whole thing.
Yeah, there you go. Wow. Yeah. Michael Petek said something very interesting. He says Gabriel Salma stripped out the Arabic vowel points and inserted from Michael Petek. Actually, let me just drop this in here. Mihal, so bugger. Okay, so you said that, I'm so clumsy when I just don't want it to be. So it says here that Gabriel Salma stripped out the Arabic vowel points and inserted Aramaic ones. He found the works of Saint Ephraim. That is very interesting. Need to look into that. That is really, really interesting. Also, Saint Murad, he's been very busy. We need to have more chats with him. He's brilliant when it comes to this kind of stuff. So yeah, he would probably agree with a lot of this. Then I was asked, am I planning to do anything on satanic cults and what they believe, a la Anton LaVey, Eliphas Levi, Crowley? Well, since you asked, just by sheer coincidence, you guys may know that I'm busy working on this. Aleister Crowley and Islam and his religion Thelema.
That picture always makes me laugh. Like, what on earth is he doing?
Who knows what he's doing? So yes, I am planning to talk about Satanism and Islam and how the two are connected. You might be very, very surprised that Aleister Crowley, the most famous Satanist perhaps of the 20th century, and a famous Gnostic and Hermetic. Oh, but by the way, Aleister Crowley also happened to be a very famous Hermetic, which is Hermes, which is Hermes Trismegistus, which is Idris in the Quran. These two go together like a horse and carriage, just so by the way, okay? Just sheer coincidence. And let's just say he used to do this. He had this practice where he would say 5 prayers a day. He traveled to Muslim lands. He started following a particular religion where you pray 5 times a day. He started reading the Quran. He started going to mosque. Sounds a little Muslim, doesn't it, Chris?
Does a bit, yeah. Can definitely see that.
just a little bit. So yes, I will be talking. I'm working on this. Let me see. This is Aleister Crowley. Totally not crazy. Look at that.
Totally not crazy. Yeah. I love that. That's brilliant.
So let's have a look. So the purpose of the Quran and the Book of the Law is to bring a new religious message to humanity. So basically, he goes to Egypt and he starts to get messages from an angel or a god or some kind of being. And this being dictates a book to him and he writes down the book. Have you heard of another religion that started like that? A being dictates a book to a man?
Yeah. Does ring a bell.
And then that religion makes all previous religions obsolete. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
And then he says that this book must never be changed. It is immutable and perfectly preserved and must be preserved from alteration. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. And then he calls Christianity a religion for slaves and he compares it unfavorably to Islam. In fact, now you guys might know this is so Crowley goes to Egypt and blah blah blah, and he travels all over the Middle East and he goes to Islamic countries and he learns from a Sufi of all things, just sheer coincidence. So he then starts Sufism, the Islamic magical practice, and he describes its doctrines as being based on pantheism. Hitler's also been described as a pantheist. Let me continue. So let's look at Muhammad. This I got from a subscriber. So thank you very much. One of the two claimed to have been contacted by an angel who selected him as the prophet of a new religion. This angel dictated to him a new revealed book focused on religious laws. The other guy was called Muhammad. So no connection to Islam at all. Joseph Smith from the Mormons also meets the same. So you have Jibril to Muhammad to the Quran, Awas to Crowley to Thelema. And the guy went and learned Islam. He became a Muslim. So yeah, so he borrowed, and his knowledge of Islam came from study, and he habitually observed the prescribed 5 prayers of the Orthodox Mohammedan and recited the Quran as he walked. Oh yeah. He was interested in Sufism and Islamic mysticism. Now this guy was known as a magician, as a sorcerer, as an occultist, as someone who practiced the dark magical arts. And he learned it from Islam.
Wow.
Right? So when people ask about magic in Islam, yeah, we're starting to go down the road. The only problem is, it is so... When you look at... When I talk about Baron von Subottendorf, and when I talk about this guy, this is going to sound like me with the guy with the crazy hair in the Ancient Aliens. I just don't want to look like that. You know what I'm saying? It's just... This stuff is crazy. And he said that Crowley believed that the tenets of Islam, correctly interpreted, are not far from Thelema's way of life and love and liberty. Satanism! When you interpret it correctly, it'll take you to Satanism. Thanks, man.
Oh, that's... I want to find that quote, because that would be a hilarious thing to bring up.
So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. I can't remember who asked that, but yeah, so guys, I'm working on a bunch of stuff. You can see these are the slides I'm working on. This is I'm still working on this. These are still raw slides, as you can tell. So let's just say this stuff gets, and of course the guys involved with Freemasonry. It includes the Gnostic Catholic Church they talk about. There's a bunch of Gnostic churches. So yep, they start speaking, and you'll see Islam and Subottendorf are tightly integrated into the Gnostic societies, the Grand Lodges, and then this guy and the Grand Lodge of France Sabotendorf is in there as well, I believe. And then this guy, Thelema, this guy who's the arch Satanist of the 20th century, he's in there. And then, of course, we talk about the Templars, and we have to go to the Templars. Everyone says nice things about the Templars. Yes, they were nice once upon a time, and then they just went insane. Okay? And of course, you start speaking about alchemy and the Templars, and for alchemy, you're going to have to go back to Egypt again. So everyone connects it to Islam, alchemia, but you have to take it back further. You go back to Egypt. So hopefully that tells you what I'm more or less what I'm busy with. But do understand, Islam is connected to anything that is occult, crazy, satanic, weird, and just off the rails. Your thoughts on this, Chris?
Well, crazy things like attract one another, right? So kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, why do you think they aren't approaching Christianity and going, yeah, let's go do some of that, I don't know, crazy magical rituals from Christianity. Let's take some of that Baptist stuff and go do something. Why do you think they're all turning to Islam, finding Islam, and then going completely satanic?
I have a funny feeling it has a lot to do with the fact that the Quran is insufficient as revelation, and that in order to rescue the Quran, you have to add almost endlessly to it. You have to add things to mysterious letters and give them secret meanings. And in which case, if you're doing that, why not stop there? Why not make them special spells that you can cast and things? So, yeah, I think it's the insufficientness of the Quran that I think has a big foundation for this.
Yeah. So anyway, we can. So it's been an hour and a half. So yeah, we came on at 5 past. We're due to start, and we came on at 9 after. So let's go another few minutes. So hopefully, Chris, would you like to discuss some of these shows with me when I do them? So you might find this interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all of this sounds incredibly interesting to me. Very, very practical.
Yeah, because one, you can use this, but you can talk about it. Hopefully, I'll be happy to share the slides with you, and then also, I think it's also important that while we're showing these things, these connections to Islam, where people found this satanic inspiration within Islam, this occult, this Gnostic, Hermetic, Theosophic, whatever inspiration in Islam, that we also provide a Christian perspective, that we provide a perspective showing, look, this is what we believe, this is what we believe is better. We don't have secret doctrines, we don't have blood rituals, we don't have these, we don't have any of this crazy stuff.
Absolutely. We don't have any rational God that is fundamentally incoherent, that is theologically inconsistent. We have a rational belief that is superior in all ways to Islam and to any other false ideology, whether that's religious or otherwise, or secular. It's something that Bob actually talks about this a lot. He mentions the importance of when we go in a speaker's corner and we have a crowd, and lots of Muslims in the crowd typically. So you're speaking to a lot of people and they're actively listening to what you say. So it's important not just to say, okay, here's why Islam is wrong. Here's why Muhammad prayed to Allat, Manuza, and Manat at this and this point, and it's recorded in Islam's traditions. Okay, that's great as an argument, but why is that a case for Christianity? And I think at the end you have to do a clear wrap up and bring them all back together and saying, look, Christianity does not have this. Jesus genuinely didn't sin, not just a pretend didn't sin.
And even the Quran agrees he did not sin.
Exactly. Yeah, I've brought it up many times as well. I bring up the hadith where it says that Satan stings or touches everyone as a newborn baby except for Maryam and Isa. And I'm like, look, you guys already believe this. You already think that Jesus is better. Muhammad, according to the hadith, has been made victorious in terror, and that's one of the reasons why he's apparently better than Jesus. Like that, does that make sense? And I think at that point,
I ask people, how many people did Jesus kill? How many wives did he have? How many young girls did he sleep with?
It's interesting. In their perspective, they think that a lot of them anyway, think Jesus is going to come back and have a wife and have kids.
And die and yeah, I know. But he's going to first break the cross. He's going to kill the pigs, and he's going to kill anyone who won't convert to Islam. Yeah. And he's going to pray behind Muhammad.
And he's going to be like, guys, why were you following those early 1st century manuscripts? Why weren't you looking at the 6th, 7th century Muhammad guy in a cave? Why were you not looking at him? He clearly knew what he was talking about, not the earliest disciples or the companions of Jesus. It's like, it's such a bizarre thing to think.
No, agreed. So of these, let's pick one more. Is there anything else we can discuss? And also just counter arguments that we can use. Because, I believe we need to go on the offensive. We need to take the argument to them. Polemics, not apologetics.
Yes. So let me. Okay. So one, there's the obvious Aisha stuff. Okay, actually, this is a foundation, and this is kind of a moral argument, but it's presented in what I think is a really nice soundbite that's quick to communicate. So according to, I believe it's Surah 33, Ayah 21. I think that's correct. You might check me on that. It says that Muhammad is an example for the Ummah. It's like, okay, so Muhammad is an example for the Ummah. And now the Quran is still relevant today, right? And they'll be like, yes, the Quran is relevant today. So that means Muhammad is still an example to you as part of the Ummah, which means community, today. And I'll say yes. And then you simply say, right, okay, so Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old. So does that mean it's prohibited to you to have sex with a 9-year-old? And at this point, they get very uncomfortable and they start doing lots of shifting about and dancing.
Wow,
but
that's
ultimately,
blunt and direct, yeah.
Yeah, you simply say, look, your Quran says that Muhammad is an example to the Ummah, so it's an example to you. Therefore, whatever he did, his conduct is an example. So it must be at the very least permissible. And you can bring up everything here. You can talk about having sex with Mary the Copt, so having sex with sex slaves. That in turn means he owned slaves. That we know that he traded slaves. You could bring about the hadith where he talks about black people having raisin heads and how you should follow a leader even if you look like an Ethiopian black man with a raisin head. You can talk about how there are hadiths that devalue a black slave in comparison to non-black slaves. You can talk about his treatment of people, having their eyes gouged out, arms and limbs ripped off, telling people to do really weird things with camel urine. Like, you can talk about all of this and simply say, please explain to me how you think Isa is not as good as this guy, or as we really know it, the person they're really trying to refer to, Jesus. Jesus is better than all these things by just a near infinite amount. There is no comparison between Muhammad and Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus wins every time. And they don't have arguments for this. They end up doing things like, oh, you see, this was just like normal in his day. Oh, and that's the thing. If they say it's normal, if they say that having sex with children is normal in their society in the Hijaz at that time of Muhammad, simply say, okay, so does that mean that other members of the Ummah or the Sahaba were doing this as well? And at this point, they'll be like, okay, yeah, I guess that implies that, yes, there would have been some that do. Okay then. So there's another verse in the Quran that says that actually the best generations are the first generations, which means that the best generation that you ought to model your life around is the one that was having sex with children. There isn't, that's something they can't get out of. That's inescapable from what they're admitting, because their Quran makes it clear. You have a great example for the Ummah in Muhammad, and the Sahaba is the best of generations. So if both of them are having sex with children, both of them were killing in the name of Allah, committing jihad, all these things, then, that's the best.
Yeah. So someone asked me about Banu Kanuka, the market where you ask the boy Hassan to be brought to him and he kisses the boy. Yeah, I don't think it's not this. Oh, where's the little one? This is it. So, I mean, this one's Al-Adab al-Mufrad, but this is also by Bukhari, but people don't realize he wrote other books, not just the Sahih. He said, where's the little one? Called Hassan came, and he put, okay. And Muhammad put his tongue in his mouth, and he said, oh, I love him, blah, blah, blah. That's what this guy's looking for. So you spelled it wrong. Yeah. Okay, Nuka, that's the spelling you were looking for. That was someone dropped this in the chat, and they gave the wrong name, so I was searching for this. This is one of them, but you'll find it elsewhere as well. Yeah, for some reason this browser has its issues, but yeah, I mean those are. So if we take it to them, the reason they attack Christianity with their polemic is that they don't really have grounds to recommend Islam to us. There's nothing about it that can't easily be shown to be just corrupt, just dirty. According to our sensibilities, this is immoral, evil, it is unclean. So this is why they have to go on the attack. They can only attack. They've got no vision to present. And also their view of what is good, their view of what is right, what is lawful, what is moral, conflicts with ours. It is actually contrary to ours. And
yes, absolutely.
And I think we have been tolerant for too long. We've been taught to be weak. I mean, look, Jesus sat down, made a whip, and then attacked people. Okay.
Yep.
Now that takes premeditation and takes intent. right? Now, I'm not saying we need to go make whips and attack people, although that could be fun for some. On occasion, there are people that could use a whipping or two, but we all feel that way sometimes. But the simple fact is that we need to go on the offensive. Doesn't mean we have to be necessarily rude or nasty, but we need to be direct. We need to be blunt. If these ideas prevail, you are going to be bending over with your ass up in the air, praying to a pagan god. You are going. Your daughter is going to be taken to marry some guy when she's 4 years old. Right? You are going to have to go on jihad and kill people so that you can get salvation. Right? The murder for salvation trick called jihad. I mean, we don't want this. We reject this, and we need to start talking about this. What we have is better. What we have is far better.
Amen.
So, and we need to be sure of this, and they are not arguing in good faith, and I think we are naive to believe that they are discussing in good faith. When the Muslims come, like the Anglican Church that I belong to, maybe past tense, but at this point, considering that the Anglican Church is just, I mean, good grief, I do not like what's happened there, but they've been doing this for years now. It's been going off the rails. But when a Muslim imam comes to a church and he does his prayer at the pulpit, he is deconsecrating the church. He is turning it into a mosque. He is consecrating it to Allah. When Christians are naive when they believe anything else is happening. So yeah, Chris, I mean, I'll leave it over to you. Final thoughts.
Yeah, completely agree. Eventually, we do need to find a backbone. It's not sufficient just thinking that we can be nice and loving and polite, particularly the sort of British stiff upper lip etiquette. It's not sufficient anymore. Rather, you need to study, you need to prepare yourself for things, realize that they have scripts. They're not speaking sincere. They didn't just come up with a very specific, challenging question out of the top of their head. No, they've memorized it. So it's important that you also study and you memorize responses and you memorize your own ways of attacking their faith and demonstrating that the gospel is superior in every way because Jesus is superior.
Yes.
I think that's a good way to
superior,
wrap that up.
Exactly. And even they have to appeal to Jesus. Think about it. Everybody. The Nazis appealed to Jesus. Sure, they made him an Aryan and they made him a warrior, but they appealed to Jesus. The Muslims appealed to Jesus. Even Satanists appeal to Jesus. Everyone tries to remake Jesus in their image because Jesus is the most important moral figure on earth in history.
Absolutely. If you think about it, it is just an ideological war for ideological possession of Jesus. Like that is an interesting way of looking at it because you look at Mormonism, you look at Islam, you look at all these things. They're always, I mean, even the secular world tries to co-opt Jesus. There's very few groups that would just flat out reject talking about it. Mm-hmm. Almost all of them will try and sway it and change your way of thinking about it to their perspective on it, to claim Jesus as their own. But it's the wrong way of looking at it. We can't claim Jesus. Jesus is the God of us. So we accept what he said and we don't try and twist it for our own political or ideological purposes.
Yeah. Yeah, we cannot coexist with something that is contradictory to what we believe. You cannot syncretize contradictions. These other religions try to do that. They'll say, sure, we can get along, and then they try to subsume you, to absorb you, to like the Borg, they will assimilate you. They're lying. You cannot coexist. One of you walks out of that ring, one of you only. You need to win, quite simply, because, there's a passage in the Bible, I don't know which one it is, maybe you'll know it, but it says, the love of God is the hatred of evil. And you cannot compromise with evil. You need to defeat it. You need to know what you stand for, and you need to defeat evil. These ideas are evil. These ideas are illogical, irrational, and lead to, if they can make you believe absurdities, they can make you commit atrocities. Atrocities, genocides, jihads. So understand, you need to win. You need to come at this from a mindset that says, I will win. And, Jesus only needed 11, right?
That's really well put.
So yeah, final word to you. And thank you everyone for the comments. Michael Petek, thank you very much for that comment. Islamic Origins actually agrees, and then yes, so that's actually a very interesting comment. And thank you guys all for the contribution. So final word to you, Chris.
Yeah, I just want to take the opportunity to thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to be on this live stream. I learn a lot. It's great to also share some experiences and arguments and polemics that I go through on most Sundays, not all Sundays, but most Sundays when I'm at Speaker's Corner. I just want to thank the audience as well. Thank you guys for being here and for tuning in. I've been reading the comments as I've been going along. Apologies, I can't engage in this and also leave comments too easy.
It's tough.
It is a little bit double-mindedness, and I just can't quite get that yet. But I have been watching them. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning in.
Well, thank you. This has been really fascinating. So hopefully let's plan to do another one in a couple of weeks. I mean, I really enjoyed speaking with you. It's a really great conversation, always.
Likewise. Yeah, absolutely. It's been great.
Yeah. So guys, thank you all very much. Thank you for the very kind contributions. Thank you for the great commentary, the great discussion. Sometimes I feel guilty because I'm not exactly the most soft-spoken Christian, but I didn't come at this as an evangelical. My job was to make sure that crazy people didn't murder other people. So I wasn't using soft speech and warm smiles. I was dealing with people that were going to kill me. Understand? So occasionally, I might have used harsh language, or a little bit of aggression. I might have given someone a look with a little bit of intent back in the day, right? So understand, this is a war we're fighting, and maybe sometimes we need warriors, not philosophers. And sometimes we need to be a bit more polemical. And I mean, even St. Peter, I believe, was quite aggressive. And and they caused controversy. They caused fights. I mean, they caused dissension. Correct?
Yeah, there was no grounds for thinking that there wouldn't have been intense arguments and all sorts of things being called. I mean, even Christ, he called the Pharisees a brood of vipers. He called them fools, called them all sorts of names. It's to demonstrate that, John 2, I think 15 onwards, talks about how he went into the temple and he made a whip out of these cords, and he started to drive people out of the temple. I don't think we're called to pacifism. I don't think we're called to a weak form of Christianity.
Yeah.
There is obviously a place for the calmer side of things, and that's absolutely fine. But let's first make sure we can have that conversation by making sure we can get in there with something effective, something upfront, and then make sure that our voices are heard. We need to make the gospel known, and we need to do it in a way that other cultures respect. And just sticking to the stiff upper lip, it's not going to do it.
Yeah, and guys, don't be an evangelifish.
Evangelifish. I heard Sam Shamoon say that, and that sort of stuck with me. Evangelifish. I like that.
Yeah,
so it's a fun little name.
No, thank you. I appreciate your time, Chris. It's really always fantastic speaking with you. I do tend to be blunt, but seriously, I was for years. I had this voice that would not leave me alone, and it said, "Lloyd, you need to make a channel. You know things that other people don't. You've had experience in the Middle East that other people have not. You need to talk about this." And I was like, "You sure? I'm maybe not the right guy for this job. I'm going to occasionally call a spade, for various values of the word spade." And well, here we are today. But thank you, guys. Thank you very much. I hope this has been educational and useful. Please use the information. And we'll see you guys again soon. Thank you very much. And Mal, thank you for joining us. Thank you for some of the great comments. This has been interesting. I've also learned things from you. I hope you like the material that I'm working on. Islam is connected to the worst, most ugliest ideas you've heard of. And it's time that we start pointing this out to people rather than the false polemic about the church is involved in A, B, and C. No, we can tie this to Islam and atheism. And I am going to enjoy kicking their butts down the road because seriously, that is coming. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Good stuff.
Take care.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
God bless.
God